Hey guys, it's Charlene. Today I'm going to share with you how I made this beautiful card using some products from Altenew's brand new release. So here we have the Mushroom Greetings outline stamp set, and then there is a coordinating die set that goes with it, as well as the Mushroom Garden layering stencil set. This is going to create our background, and we're going to be doing some fun and different things here that are going to help you get more out of your craft supplies. So you can see it's a 4-layer layering stencil, and there in the packaging, Altenew always has such beautiful imagery and instructions. So I'm starting out here with a piece of white cardstock, just putting it down into my stamp wheel. It's going to stick right in place there. And what's really nice is I can just put my stencils right over the paper, and they're going to stick right to the sticky grid of the stamp wheel. And if you don't have a stamp wheel, you could do this with a sticky mat or something similar, but the stamp wheel makes it really easy. So I'm starting out with a small blending brush here, and I've got some frayed leaf. And the first thing I'm going to show you guys is a really fun technique for your layered stencils. So you see I went through the entire stencil there with the frayed leaf. I'm going to pull this first stencil off and put my second one down, and I'm going to go in with a second shade of green. So this background is going to be completely monochromatic. It's going to have all different shades of green, and this is a great way to use your layering stencils if you're wanting to create a nice background piece where you can then pop something on the front, and you're going to see that with the stamp set I used. So here I've got some Forest Glades, which is a slightly different shade of green. Take that stencil off and put the third layer right on here. And you'll notice that, mushrooms generally aren't green, but that's okay. When you're doing a monochromatic background like this, you don't have to be true to life at all. So for this layer, I'm coming in with some Olove, which is a really nice olive shade of green. And once I get that down, I can come in with my fourth layer here. And for my fourth layer, I'm going to be using Evergreen. So you can see I'm using tons of different green colors here, but when everything is all finished, it just looks like this amazing, calm, serene background. So depending on what you're going for, you can pick your monochromatic color scheme based on that. If you want it to kind of fade into the background, you could use some browns or grays or something like that. If you really want your background to be in your face, kind of popping out from the card, you could use really bright colors like all different shades of pink or teal or something like that, and you're going to get a gorgeous background. So there it is. Look at all those greens mixed together. I think that looks so cool. So now for my piece that's really going to pop on this card, I put down a piece of alcohol marker friendly cardstock there, and I've got a stamp from the Mushroom Greetings outline stamp set. So it's this kind of cluster of mushrooms. They're different sizes, have different kinds of details on them, and they're just really fun to color. I'm stamping them out with some fresh dye ink, some jet black, and this is really great for alcohol marker coloring. This ink works super well, and you can see I didn't get a great impression the first time. I didn't push down, I think, everywhere I needed to. So I did decide to go ahead and go back in and stamp a second time. And I have no problems with the stamp wheel stamping exactly in the same spot. I love that. Your cardstock doesn't move at all, which is super nice. So we're going to come back in here, do that second stamping, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my alcohol marker coloring. And I actually chose to do it just directly here with my paper still sitting on the stamp wheel. Really easy to do. So I've sped this coloring up here, but I did want to show you the colors I was coming in here with. So for this red mushroom here, I'm using R14, R27, and R29. And you can see to give it that dimension, I did the whole thing in the lightest shade, which was that R14. And then on the sides, I did the R27 and R29 and brought it towards the center. That gives you kind of a 3D look where it looks like the middle part of the mushroom from the side is kind of popping out towards you. For the stems on these mushrooms, I'm going to be using a lot of warm grays. I'm using W0, W1, W3, W5, and W7. And I'm just kind of varying those on all of the different stems of the mushroom. So some I'm putting a little darker, some I am making a little bit lighter, just sort of depending on how I'm feeling about that particular mushroom. There's no rhyme or reason. You could do this in cool grays too. I just thought the warm grays would work really well with the greens in the background that I'm going to have. So you can see I left those little spots essentially blank. I did put a little bit of shading with the warm grays on there as well. I think I used some W0 on them, not very much at all. I wanted them to pretty much remain white. So once I had all the stems done, I came in here and colored one of the mushrooms here with some yellows. I used Y11, Y15 and Y17, same thing, did the whole thing in the lightest shade, and then I came in with those two darker shades of yellow just to make it look like it's 3D. For these two last mushrooms, I'm going to be doing them in blues. I'm using B12 and B18, so a pretty wide spans between those two, but I'm using my glass craft mat in order to help me kind of blend out the colors. So I've put a little bit of B18 down on my glass mat, and then I'm using my B12 marker just to pick up some of that B18 and blend it into the B12 that I've already done. So you can see how that kind of creates an in-between color. So here's a fun way to add some details to your cards. I've put down some anti-static powder tool, and now I'm using an embossing ink pen. And these are made by lots of different manufacturers, and I'll link down below in the description to pretty much everything I'm using today. But these embossing ink pens are really fun for adding details because you essentially color just like you would with a marker, but instead of putting colored ink on the paper, you're putting embossing ink. So you can heat emboss anywhere that you color in. So what I'm doing is I'm coloring in all of the blue mushrooms, and then later I'm also going to color in the dots on the other mushrooms, the little accent dots. And now what I can do is I can go in with some clear embossing powder, heat emboss those, and I'm gonna get this raised beautiful shine on those mushrooms. You could do this on any card. You could do it with any color of embossing powder, but in particular when you are wanting to give something a little bit of extra shine and make it kind of look like it has some dimension to it, you could do this with clear embossing powder and it looks really cool. And what's nice about this is you can do it as many times as you want to. So here I've got my first layer of the clear embossing powder. I'm going to melt that with my heat gun, and then off camera I went in and I just colored in the exact same areas, put another round of clear embossing powder on there and melted it again, and it just gave me this beautiful raised shine on those mushrooms. This is one of those detail things that really adds a lot to a card but doesn't actually take that long to do. Such a nice way to get that dimension and shine on your card. Now for my sentiment, I am using a sentiment from that Mushroom Greetings outline stamp set, and I'm going to heat emboss this as well. So I'm putting down some anti-static powder tool. I've got my sentiment there on my top plate for my stamp wheel, stamping it in some embossing ink, and then I'm actually going to use some black embossing powder for the sentiment here. So once I get that on there, I'll put my embossing powder on, and then I can melt it with my heat gun. And like I said, there is a coordinating die set, so that's what I'm using to cut out the sentiment as well as to cut out the cluster of mushrooms. And off camera, I did cut out a few extras so that I could layer them up and glue them together to give those pieces some thickness, so that way they'll have some dimension on the front of the card. Now for my beautiful stenciled panel here, I'm adding some of the Instant Dimension foam tape from Altenew. This is a really nice thickness of foam tape. It gives you some dimension without making it so thick that you can't mail your card, so I do like it quite a bit. And I'm just going to pop this panel that I've cut down and put the foam tape on. I'm going to pop it in the center of my card base. So this is an A2 sized card, meaning it's 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. And you can see I have about 1/4 inch of a white border from my card base all the way around that stenciled panel. So I only pulled back a little bit of the release tape before I put this down. That just makes it a lot easier to center. So you pull off the rest of it once you get it down exactly where you want it. For the other pieces, for the sentiment as well as the mushroom cluster, I'm just gluing those right on there with some liquid adhesive, and I'm going to put them towards the bottom right hand corner because I think that it creates a fun, interesting look, and it shows off a lot of that background that we did with all of those awesome different shades of greens. So once I have those on there, that pretty much finishes up this card. I do want to show you on the inside, I used a little scrap from the stenciled background and I put that on the inside of my card for a nice detail. So you guys, this video is part of the Altenew September 23 release video hop, so check down in the description. Lots of fun prizes and things like that going on. I hope you guys picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue bringing you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.